this morning. I'm trying to get woke up out here. Well, I figured I'd drink a little coffee and do a little story time, as they say. I ain't done that for a while. Mostly been fishing all the time. So it just reminds me, middle of the summer, you know, it's getting hot. Reminds me of an old story, something that happened to me that I ain't never shared on here, coming on about a couple years ago. A story about how I got busted for making the old moonshine liquor. I guess the story starts back a long time ago when I was just a little kid. Well, I guess it starts kind of where I got my name, JR. I had an old cousin that was named JR Willis. And I thought he was the coolest. And he was kind of like a myth or a legend to me when I was a kid, because he was Dad's best friend, and they grew up together, and that's where I got the idea. I actually gave myself the moniker JR because my name is actually Jonathan Reed Willis. A lot of people think it stands for Junior, but when I started school, you know, like I was saying, Dad would tell me all these stories about things him and JR used to do, and I remember hearing him talk about it. And then I started in kindergarten, and you had to learn how to write your name. And I remember thinking, boy, I could use JR to be a lot easier to write than Jonathan. And the teacher asked everybody at the beginning of, like the first day of school, you could go by whatever name you went by whenever they called your name. So I spoke up and said, my name's JR. So that's where that come from. And I was actually naming myself after my cousin because I hadn't met him yet then, but Dad would tell me all these stories about things they would do, and he sounded like quite a character. JR was really cool. Later on I got to meet him. We spent a lot of time going over there. Me and Dad used to go over there all the time, and they talk about old times. And JR was a gunsmith, an outdoorsman, and I remember he killed a wild hog. It was like 6 feet long one time with a 44 pistol. He had this 44, had the silver chrome plated 6-inch barrel. Man, I thought that was the coolest gun. He shot that hog with that. He lived over there by the Pearl River Swamp, way back in the woods. No other houses around. Me and Dad would go over there and they'd talk about old times. JR was a gunsmith, like I say. And he made his own knives and stuff, and he had this big Bowie knife that he'd made. Man, it looked like something store-bought. Beautiful, shiny, chrome looking, you know. And I just thought he was the coolest, man. So anyhow, him and Dad used to make moonshine liquor when they was younger, and they'd tell me all them old stories. And oh, I just thought that was the coolest. I thought I had to learn about that. I wanted to learn about it. And then I watched a old movie they used to have when I was a kid called Soggy Bottom USA. Had this old man on there making whiskey out in the swamp. I forget his name. It may have been Dub Taylor. He was played on a lot of old movies. He was a funny actor, but I can't remember for sure if that was his name. But anyhow, on that movie, he was real funny, and oh, I thought that was the coolest, you know. And I used to hang out in the swamp all the time when I was a kid. I was always walking around out there. I was the only kid, so wasn't a whole lot to do, and everybody's house is kind of far apart. Really didn't hang out with a lot of people. Spent a lot of time walking around out in the woods and stuff, in the swamp. So boy, I thought that was cool. I thought the way he had that steel, you know, and I wanted to be a scientist too when I was a kid. And that steel with all that looked scientific. Boy, I thought it was the coolest thing. So anyhow, I kept pestering Dad. Dad would tell me stories about him and JR making that liquor, how they'd put it behind the old stump or something. People come by and put their money, get it, and then told me about where they made this steel, and they dug a big hole, spent all night digging a hole, and buried their steel down in the ground. That way nobody could see it. They covered up with some wood and put leaves over it. And I remember they said, I guess I can't remember the man's name right now, but it was either that Fortune man down at Four Corners or that Woods over here. But he was a big moonshiner, and he told Dad and JR that he'd buy the copper and make the steel if they'd work for him, but they never would do it. They done their own thing. So anyhow, Dad said he got worried about it because JR was a sampler, and he would always sample a little too much, and he'd get kind of big mouthy. And they'd go down to Sammy Thrasher's bar and stuff, and JR would talk a little too much about what they was doing. And back then, you know, that was a big thing. A lot of people get in big trouble about it. If you wasn't on the inside and paying the right people, greasing the right palms, you know, you get in big trouble. So anyhow, they got out of it. But hearing them old stories as a kid, I wanted to do it, boy. So I pestered Dad, and I pestered Dad, show me how to do it. Dad quit drinking around about the time I was born, so he wasn't fooling with none of that anymore. So I pestered him. Well, he finally said, all right then, I'll show you how to do it. And me and him made old steel out of old beer keg, welded a rim in the top of it, and we went over to JR's, and he had a big old piece of, I guess it was 1/2 inch copper, big old roll of it. So we made the coal out of that. And I took a 5-gallon bucket, drilled a hole in the bottom, and run that copper through that hole, and didn't have no running water. We put it out there in the shed out back. So I just take some Coke bottles, freeze them, stick that over in that bucket of water, and just kept changing them out. Had to have a few of them to make a batch of liquor. The first time I made it, they didn't make about a gallon, gallon and a half. I guess some beer kegs about 15 gallons. The first time I made it, I took a drink of that stuff, boy, it lit me up too, man. And I didn't pour them heads off or nothing. Dad didn't mention nothing about it. And I drank the whole mess, all of it. I didn't go blind or nothing, so I might be crazy on account of it. I remember I'd make that stuff, boy, I'd get right. Anyhow, time went on, I quit fooling with it. I didn't ever sell none, I just made it for my own self. And didn't do it that often, just a few times made it. I was pretty young, I was still in school. Anyhow, time goes on and didn't fool with it none. I always thought about it though, and I don't know, around the early 2000s, that old TV show Moonshiners come out. And I remember watching them guys on there when it first come on. We had the old satellite TV back then. Dish Network or something like that. Had the old black looking little small satellite dish that sits out there in the yard. And I remember it come on, it had the old Tim and Tickle on there. And they was the only ones on it back then. Boy, I got to watching that and I was thinking, boy, I'd like to get back making some old whiskey. But I didn't. Time went on. Moved up to Nashville, lived up there about 10 years or so. Never did fool with it. Didn't drink at all when I was living there, and thank God, because ain't no telling what kind of mess I'd have got into. But I got back down to Mississippi, year 2000. It was right before COVID hit real bad, and Mama had a heart attack, a bad heart attack. And I come down here just thinking I was gonna help out for her to get better. And she was in the hospital a good bit right there. You know, they had to keep her, and they wound up having to do a major heart surgery on her, replace her aortic valve. So she stayed in the hospital a long time, you know, some months right there. And I hadn't realized, because I'd come down just at the holidays, and I hadn't realized how bad a shape Dad had gotten into. And he was on his last leg and I didn't even know it until I got down here and spent some time here, just seeing them for a little while on the holidays. They seemed all right, but things were getting worse rapidly. And anyway, to make a long story short, Mama survived, got her heart surgery done during all that COVID. It was a nightmare, and Dad was steadily getting in worse and worse shape. By the end of that summer, he'd gotten such bad shape that he was basically bed bound. We had to get a Hoyer lift to get him up and down out of the bed. I had to bathe him in the bed and everything. Mama was in bad shape. It was a real scary time. And in the end, Dad wound up passing away that year in 2020. It wasn't of COVID, it was just old age, you know. He was just wore out. And that hit me pretty hard because Dad was my best friend as a kid. I always respected him, you know. Thought he was the coolest guy, you know. He never raised his voice, never got mad about stuff. But anyhow, after that happened, time goes on, a couple years, a year or so. Well, me and Nikki got together. We was friends in Nashville, and we got talking online, and her mom had passed away that same year, and she was by herself, and she wound up selling her property that she'd inherited and moving down here, and now we wound up getting married. Well, me and her's hanging out, and I'd been drinking after Dad died. Like I said, the whole time I was in Nashville, I didn't drink. I got back down here, Dad passed away, Mom wasn't doing so good, I didn't know what was gonna happen. I got real depressed, got turned to the old bottle, you know, and got to drinking, and I said, man, beer's expensive, and whiskey, you get too messed up, bad on you. So I said, well, I can make my own whiskey, and it'll be better than that crap they sell up at the store. I said, I know how to do that. So I drugged the old steel out, put it back together. Nikki didn't know nothing about it, even though she come from the mountains, the prime location for it, with all that good water. She didn't know nothing about that stuff. So I got the old steel out, made a new cap for it out of copper. I beat that thing on there with a baseball bat to make it fit right. Had old Tommy jack for a vehicle, old heavy jack. I sat on top of it and hold it down. Well, Nikki thought it was gonna blow up or something. She was scared of it. You know, I had to put that paste around it. It sometimes a little steam come out and everything. I had it back there in the old shed. She was scared it was gonna blow up. So she seen online they had these little old steels, selling them on Amazon. And it was I believe it was 13 gallon, about near big as that beer keg, old stainless steel outfit. Look, it's just basically a cooking pot that they jerry-rigged and put a seal on it. It come with a little old piece of copper coil on it, about big as a pencil. But anyhow, the pot was decent, good enough. So I rebuilt all that, went up to Lowe's, got me some 1/2 inch copper, 3/4 inch, ever what it is, I can't remember. It's about big as your index finger. Made me a new coil out of it. Put it in an old 5-gallon bucket, just like in the old days. Well, I rigged it up and hooked it up to that old thumper that come with it. It was all right. I had it out there in the shed. Well, we went to making this liquor. I was making it all the time. I wasn't selling none. I wasn't trying to get no trouble or make no money. I was just making it for my own self. Well, then Nikki got to drinking. She started liking it. I started making that sour mash. That's when you use the same corn. You just keep reusing the same corn. Every now and then you dip a little bit out and put some new in. That yeast gets forming in there, and that stuff, man, you throw that sugar to it, it sounds like bacon frying, man. It goes crazy immediately. Well, it gets a real smooth taste when you get to making it like that. And that stuff got smooth. You can drink way too much before you even realize it. So that's what happened. And Nikki got to like it. So we get drinking one night. She get mouthy. I'd get bad attitude, you know. So she done got mouthy one night, and I flew off handle, and we got in this big old argument, boy. Oh, it was around. We was hollering, carrying on middle of the night, probably about 1 in the morning or something. My bedroom's right next to Mama's. She heard all that racket. Well, it scared her. So she called 911. Well, next thing I know, the police was coming up. Well, whenever Nikki seen that happening, seen what happened with the law and everything, she hit the woods. Well, we was both butt naked. We was done. The argument was done over by then. We laid down, went to bed, butt naked. You know, she hit the woods, butt naked. Boy. Run back yonder. I got an old trailer on the back of my lot back there. I used to live in it when I was about 18. You know, I wanted my own place. I didn't get too far off from Mama and them, you know. But I wanted it back there out of the way so I wasn't right in front of them. So anyhow, she was back there. She hid out in that trailer. Well, I'm in there in the bed, passed out. Next thing I know, I wake up, this big old black cop standing there, boy. I thought he was big. I've seen him after it. He wasn't even that big of a guy. It was just, he had all that stuff on him, and you know, he's standing up over my bed. So I was like, what's going on? You know, I'm still drunk. So I went to cussing him out, telling him to get out of my house. He didn't have no search warrant, you know, and all this stuff. Because I inherited the house from Dad. Whenever he passed away, he put it in my name. He'd already set it up in my name before he passed away. That way, couldn't nothing happen if something bad they had wound up in the hospital, they couldn't take the place. Let me get this dog straight, because he's on a whine spree now. We have to put him in his cage at night a lot of times. They allow him to run out in the road. Let me let that joker out so he'll shut up. All right, I got him situated. Maybe he won't come up here and rear up on the tripod. Anyhow, where was I at? Oh yeah, the law showed up. Nikki'd hit the woods, you know. So he comes in there questioning me and everything. I'm up in the bed, I'm naked. He gets me out, I get a robe on. He got me out here in the yard, you know, they weaseled me out here. Got me out of the house. They didn't have a search warrant, but they was called on this domestic issue, so I guess, I don't know, I didn't fight it too hard in court. Anyhow, they went looking for Nikki. They don't question her. So they found that steel out there in the shed when they went looking for her. Then they went and found her back yonder, butt naked, get her back up to the house. Well, by then they found that steel, they had me. You know, they slapped the cuffs on me. Well, I started trying to get away from them. Well, they pull out this taser. They started zapping me with it. And I'm gonna put the article on there out of the newspaper where y'all can see it, because they wrote it in the article that the taser was ineffective. I guess that old white lightning I had brewed up was stronger than their electronic taser. I said they must have got it up there at the Dollar Tree. They zapped me well, you know, it's Neshoba County, so. They zapped me about 3 times with it. I didn't own the bare skin. I just had this old robe on. They stuck it to my chest. Hell, I had these little marks like where it burnt, fried the skin, but it didn't feel like hardly nothing, about like electric fence, just a little vibration. I told him, I said, I thought y'all had something stronger than that. I thought them things were supposed to knock you out or something. Well, finally I succumbed to them. They manhandled me around in the car. Well, I had to sit in the back seat with them cuffs on. Well, I felt like I was gonna break my arm off while I waited, had to get the ABC man out here. Well, it was about 3 in the morning or something by then. He had to come from Kemper County. So he had to call him, get him to come out here. So anyhow, he finally got out here. They confiscated all the steel and the mash and all that. Took me up there to the jailhouse. Of course, I seen people I knew up there was real embarrassed about the whole thing. I was trying to get the thing I was gonna get out of it. I said, well, I was just making some beer and wine. But you know, the ABC man coming there and talked to me. I wouldn't talk to him about it. I said, I ain't got nothing to say, you know. I said, ain't nothing I can say to you that's gonna help me. So anyhow, they bonded Mama and Nikki. Nikki went and bonded me out. And she took her money, some of her money, and bonded me out. And we went and got a lawyer. She paid for that. I didn't have enough money. If she hadn't had the money, I don't know what I'd have done. Went to court. You know, it took forever. It seemed like nearly a year before I finally went to court over the thing. Well, they charged me for possession of this unlicensed distillery, and they put me on probation and had to pay a big fine, around about, I guess about $3,000 altogether for that, and then the lawyer was $4,000, so we just blew a bunch of money on it. And I had to do the probation, and the probation ain't that complicated. Just the main thing was don't get in no trouble, you know. So I guess they took it kind of easy on me, but boy, it sure hurt the old back pocket. You know, that's the way it went. That's the way the story goes, and I reckon my moonshining days is over, because, you know, a lot of people think, and I talked to a lot of people, said, well, I thought you were allowed to make like 200 gallons a year. It ain't true. You're not allowed to make any distilled alcohol. You can make, now what they're confusing, and I got all this clarified with that ABC guy, you can make beer or wine up to like 200 gallons a year, I think it is, but you can't distill it. Kind of a weird law, you know, because alcohol's alcohol, in my opinion. The law will get you in trouble. But anyhow, that's the real truth. Take it from a horse's mouth. Don't get no big ideas about making your little backyard still. I mean, you can probably get away with it, and I know a lot of people do it. People make YouTube videos of it. But it is illegal to distill alcohol in the state of Mississippi. And for some, like me, freak, weird reason, you know, but alcohol can lead you to all kind of freak, weird reasons that you get caught with it. And that's what happened to me. You know, I wasn't selling it or telling people I was doing it or nothing, but I guess like it says in the Bible, what's done in the shadows will be brought to the light. And it was brought to the light. They put it on the front page of the doggone Neshoba County Democrat and made it look like a big, they said, moonshine operation discovered. I'll put that picture on here where y'all can see it. Like it was some kind of big thing, you know. That Neshoba County rag had to have something to talk about, so they made it look like a big deal, but it was just a personal still, 13-gallon still, make about 1.5 gallons of drinkable liquor. You know, it was just enough for me and the wife, really. If I'd wanted to sell it, I would have been able to make enough to sell. But you ain't allowed to do that, so I had to pay the piper, you know, and I learned my lesson, I reckon. I won't be distilling no more alcohol in the state of Mississippi, or probably nowhere else neither, because I'm one of them kind, I get to making it, I'm about like old JR, where I got my name, you know, I get to sampling a little too much of it. So anyhow, that's the story about how I got busted for that. And kids, if there's kids watching, take a lesson from me. Don't learn from my mistake. Don't make the same mistake I did. Probably best off just leaving it alone. But you know, some people can handle a little drink, but I probably ain't one of them. So anyhow, folks, that's my story. We'll see y'all next time. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Hope I didn't bore y'all too much. But look at him. Starting to get on daylight back yonder. Hey, we're going to have to go fishing now. Check these lines out. I got a couple poles out here. Old buttheads done woke up. Quit smelling down there, you sorry joker. What's up? What's your problem? All right, folks. See y'all next time. Appreciate y'all.